You guys know what is a rookie mistake for a booktuber? To put a schedule together for something like Mistborn March and realize that one of those weeks that you plan to put a schedule together, the kids are home from school. Not smart. Belief isn't simply a thing for fair times and bright days. What is belief? What is faith? If you don't continue it after failure, what does it matter? Anyone can believe in someone or something that always succeeds, but failure? Now that is hard to believe in, certainly and truly. Difficult enough to have value. Sometimes we just have to wait long enough. Then we find out why exactly it was that we kept believing. There's always another secret. Every action we take has consequences. I found that in both allomancy and life, the person who can best judge the consequences of their actions will be the most successful. Our belief is often strongest when it should be the weakest. That is the nature of hope, but you can't kill me, Lord Tyrant. I represent the one thing you've never been able to kill no matter how hard you try. I am hope. It means that you are a very special person. You have a power that most high noblemen envy. It is a power that had you been born an aristocrat, it would have made you one of the most deadly and influential people in all of the Final Empire. But you weren't born an aristocrat. You're not noble. You don't have to play by their rules. And that makes you even more powerful. Hey, what's up, bookworms and Lord Ruler Brandon Sanderson fans? Mike back again with more Mistborn March to talk today about the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. Now, guys, if you don't know by now, Mistborn March is something I'm doing on the channel where I talk about everything that happened in the original Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. Won't be covering Era 2 or anything like that, just the first 3 books, because honestly, those are the only ones that I have read. But what I did is a why you should read for Mistborn, and then I'm going to do each one of the first 3 books, spoiler reviews for each one of these. Now, this was a decision that I actually polled, did a loose polling on it, but I kind of knew which way I was leaning. I decided to go spoiler reviews on these, much like my Wheel of Time or my Witcher or things like that, or First Law videos, which is where I'm going to run down the entire plot and talk about it. And the reason I decided to do it this way is because, guys, if you want a non-spoiler review of this series, watch that first video of why you should read the Mistborn trilogy, because if I did 3 non-spoiler reviews for these books, all I'm going to be doing is that same video 3 more times. There's not really much more I can tell you about the plot that I didn't tell you in that 25-minute video. So that is why I made the decision I did. I'm sorry if some of you are upset by that, but at this point I feel like most people on this channel have read this series and they want to hear me talk about in depth the plot and things like that, and I can't do that in a non-spoiler review. And like I said, there's nothing else I can add to this non-spoiler that I didn't speak of in that video. So that's why I decided to do it this way. So if you have not read the Mistborn trilogy, I would turn back now. Click the link that I've got below where you can buy the book from my Amazon affiliate. Guys, it is like $14 for the entire trilogy on paperback. It's worth it, and you will be able to read it really, really quick. So don't stress it. Don't stress it. You will be able to read this so fast because it's so addicting. It is such a page turner in every sense of the word. But we're going to get into it now. So spoiler alert over. I did want to say that this one. Well, I guess first I want to say it's been a while since I read this, guys. I told you in that video I read this in 2016. So it was kind of hard for me to go back and remember everything. Usually when I do these spoiler in-depth reviews like this, it's right after I've read the book. You know, my Wheel of Time, my Dresden Files, my Witcher, all that stuff is right after I have read the book. So there has been quite a gap between when I finish reading these and when I'm going to talk about them in depth here. So if I forget some things, you got to understand, I'm not going to retain everything. I've retained most of the stuff, I believe, and once I was able to, skim and jog my memory a little bit, I was able to remember pretty much the whole thing, but there was parts where I'm like, well, did this happen in book 2 or did this happen in book 1? Things like that. But if there are little details that I leave out and you're like, dude, I can't believe you didn't talk about this, that's why. That's why. So these are old notes that I'm going off of here, and there's some things that I kind of went through and added that I want to talk about. But also, this first video is going to be a little longer than for Well of Ascension or Hero of Ages, and that is because I'm going to talk about the individual characters, and I'm going to talk about the 8 basic metals of Allomancy here, so I don't have to explain every time I'm talking about it who this character is and what it is they can do and what the allomantic power that they're using actually does. So again, if you're a spoiler, but you probably know this, but just for a refresher, let's go through. The basic pitch for this book is that there's a man named Kelsier. He recruits a street urchin named Vin who has allomantic powers, and he decides to have her join his crew, which is going to attempt to overthrow the tyrannical Lord Ruler, who is thought to be immortal. But let's talk about each of these characters of that crew up front. And I don't need to, like I said, so I don't need to elaborate each time they come up about who they are. I can just tell you, hey, this character showed up, and you're not like, who? Who is this? Anyway, obviously Kelsier, he is basically the lead for this book. He's a famous thief. He made his fortune stealing from nobles. Not quite like a Robin Hood character or stuff like that, but you can see some of that in there. But eventually him and his wife, they are caught. They are sent to this prison called the Pits of Halcyon. I'm probably saying that wrong. but this is where he inherits her dream of rebellion against the Lord Ruler after his escape, and she does not survive. And you have Vin. Vin is a street urchin. She discovers that she is Mistborn. She's grown up on the street, so she has serious trust issues. She's scarred by the methods that her brother has taught her, basically on ways to survive life on the street. So she doesn't trust anybody, and she's quite guarded. She doesn't want to let anybody get close. Next up, we have Sazed. Sazed is what is known as a keeper. Now, he has the ability to store knowledge, strength, and even time in metal. And, he uses these little metal armbands that he can store all this stuff in. And he's somewhat of a historian and a religious scholar of like 500 different religions and languages and things like that. So he's just any type of scholar that you can think of. It's like is it Myron from Ryra? Brother Myron? Kind of like that. So he is there to provide you with your lore and your recaps and your history and stuff like that, but not in a way that seems like an info dump. Because, Sanderson don't do that. But he is a scholar. He likes to share his knowledge of the New World, and he's hoping that he can do that with people after a hopeful New World, rather than this, if they are able to overthrow the Lord Ruler. Next up, you have Brees, which is my favorite secondary character in this story. He is what is known as a soother. Now, a soother burns brass, and it can manipulate people's emotions. He's a recruiter for Kelsier. He serves for a lot of the levity and comic relief, so to speak, in this book. He has all of the best one-liners, and I'm sure I'll mention those a couple of times as I go along here. Doxson, this is Kelsier's oldest friend, and he's pretty much like the coordinator for the group. He plans all the missions and intelligence and things like that. Hammond, he's the heavy. He burns pewter to enhance his physical strength, and he is in charge of training the new recruits for Kelsier's army and this crew here. Spook is what is known as a tin-eye, because he burns tin, and when you burn tin, it enhances all 5 senses. And he is also related to Clubs, and Clubs is obviously this is the dude who's his place is their hideout, and he is what is known as a smoker. A smoker is someone who burns copper to kind of cover the traces of allomancy, so no one can tell that there is an allomancer around. So because there are people who can, I'll get into that when I get to the metals, that can detect these things. And you have Lord Renault. He is a nobleman who supports the overthrow of the Lord Ruler. And finally, you have Marsh, and Marsh is Kelsier's brother and also a seeker. And like I said earlier, I said a keeper. A seeker actually can detect other allomancers, rather. So as you see, you have one major character in here that has like a different ability, and that is obviously very important, because Much like a video game, every single time Vin is losing, each one of these guys works with Vin to teach her how to use these different abilities. And so it's much like leveling up, you know. But again, I've heard people make the comparison to like a video game there, and I could see it. But again, to me, not in a way where it's like, okay, this is a little formulaic. So there are a couple of non-crew characters I want to mention. Obviously, the Lord Ruler. This is your main antagonist. He's immortal, a self-proclaimed god of the Final Empire. It is said he saved mankind from, was it the deepness, the darkness? Might be getting my stories mixed up here. Over 1,000 years ago, he saved mankind and humanity, and he then remade it into the dystopia that it's become. So it's kind of like a thanks for nothing, you know, kind of thing. Straff Venture, he is the head of the most powerful noble house in the kingdom, and then you have his son Elend Venture, the reluctant heir to House Venture, which we will get into. He's kind of like the new blood kind of thing. Before I get into the story, I want to talk about the magic system. See my Why You Should Read video for a little bit of a better explanation, really, of what the magic system, what the impact is. All I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about the 8 basic metals quickly and their powers. Iron. Iron is able to pull on nearby metals. A person that can burn iron is called a lurcher. Iron. I said that weird. Iron. They are called a lurcher. Steel, it pushes on nearby metals, and a person can burn steel. They are called a coin shot, and that's very important in this series. Tin, like I said, that enhances all 5 senses. Those are called a tenai. Pewter, it enhances physical strength. They are called a thug. Real original there, huh? Brass, they are able to burn brass, and it soothes emotions, much like I said with Brees earlier, and they are called a soother. Then you have zinc, which riots emotions, pretty much the opposite of soothing. And a person who can burn zinc is called a rioter. You know, obviously we're not getting crazy original on some of these here. Copper, they are able to hide allomancy, and they are called a smoker. And lastly, you have bronze that reveals an allomancer, and a person who can burn bronze, like I said, is called a seeker. I keep getting seeker and keeper mixed up. It probably won't be the last time. So let's get into it here. The prologue of this book completely stunned me. Because, you know, at this time, I'm like, I know this is my first Brandon Sanderson. That's my first Brandon Sanderson chapter ever. And right off the bat, the man I'm assuming is this, you know, white moral character goes into this place of nobles, and he just completely kills everybody because the lord of this house is attempting to rape and kill a ska girl, which is basically slaves, and the peasants or skas. But he has a ska slave, and he's like torturing her, about to rape her, or insinuating that he's going to rape her and then kill her when he's done with her. So Kelstra goes and kills him and all of his guards, and it's like, wow, okay, this is a different kind of protagonist than I was expecting. But then in the actual first chapter, we are introduced to Vin, the street urchin, and she uses allomancy to work, you know, scam jobs and things like that. And she's discovered by Steel Inquisitors. Think of this as like the magic police force. Steel Inquisitors. They're able to detect allomancers and hunt them down, and they want to, you know, either capture them or, you know, convert them to other Inquisitors. It really. In this book, I don't think it's really talked about a ton. I think that's a little bit later. But again, my memory might be a little fuzzy on this. Why, if they just want to straight up kill them, or if they want to capture them and turn them to the dark side, so to speak. But Kelsier meets up with Doxon, and they notice the Inquisitor and decide to intervene. And Doxon runs distraction, and they're able to, you know, save Vin from this Inquisitor. But Kelsier decides to test Vin and finds out that she is a Mistborn. And if you don't remember, a Mistborn is someone who can burn any metal, not just one. Most of these people can only do one. If you can do multiple or all 8, you are known as a Mistborn. At the time, we think it's just 8. That's slowly revealed over the course of the story. So he decides to take Vin on as a student and have her join his crew. So it's kind of like, well, is he taking her on as the goodness of her heart, or is it just because he thinks it might benefit him? Which is a kind of after that prologue, you're kind of like, I'm not sure about this guy yet. You know, I'm not really sure if I should be rooting for him or not. I mean, obviously he wants to overthrow this Lord Ruler character, but you don't know right away. Is he any better? You know, are we replacing one tyrant with another kind of thing? You don't know. And that's what's great about Sanderson. He reveals these things slowly. But Kelsier introduces her to the crew and tells them that he has discovered atium. Now, atium is known in legends as the 11th metal. What are 9 and 10, you're asking? We'll get there. But Kelsier heads to Keep Venture, where he plans to steal more adium, and he fights off these things called haze killers. Now, haze killers are basically non-magic users who are trained to kill allomancers. So he fights them off. There's some really cool stuff with the way that they use coins to push on this, like I talked about earlier. Such a neat idea. Basically, it can make them, throw a coin at the ground, you can push off of it, and it can make you basically, not fly, but you keep throwing coins, you can basically fly, so it's not quite just like straight OP super flight, but, as long as he's got a coin, you keep pushing on it. You're going to run out of coins eventually, probably. But it's a really neat idea to give them, super jumps and things like that. I'm really on board with it, and this is the first real instance where you have to see what a fully trained Mistborn can do here. Back at the hideout, Marsh arrives, and that is Kelsier's brother. He's kind of gotten jaded over the years about this whole goal of overthrowing the Lord Ruler and doesn't think it's really possible. So Kelsier convinces him it's time to rejoin the crew, and then he notices Vin is eavesdropping. So he's like, all right, you know what? It's time to get your hands dirty a little bit. So he decides time to take her out for her first real training. And he gives her a mist cloak, and he gives her info about the 8 basic metals and the difference between pushing and pulling. Like I said, if you want more, read yourself here. I went over what the 8 metals are. This is basically the first info dump, but at this point, I'm itching to know what these different metals can do. So my first read, I'm all about, okay, this guy's like pushing and pulling on these metals and stuff. It gives you what Sanderson usually does. He'll introduce his magic system when you'll see someone, like you think of the prologue of Way of Kings, where the magic system is introduced, and you're just like, I have no idea what's going on. So he's fighting these haze killers, like, oh my god, what is all this stuff? And then it slowly gets explained, and I think that's what Sanderson does with his magic systems. It is so great. He throws it all at you and gives you a little bit by little bit of how it works, and it's done fantastically here. And I will probably say fantastic about 1,200 times this review, just so you guys know. Quite a fan of the book. But we arrive at Lord Renault's estate, and we meet Sazed, where he offers, religious history. Again, more info dumps, but again, never in a way that... a lot of people consider the word info dump a bad thing. I will just continue to say it. I think Sanderson does info dumps better than everybody else because he doesn't hit you with 200 pages of it. He doesn't hit you with full chapters of it. He gives you little pieces along the way. And I think it's done in a way that makes learning about history never feel like you're in school, never feel like you're learning. You're actually just kind of soaking this in and getting more and more immersed into the world, and it works really, really well here. But Renault comes up with the idea of Vin going undercover as his first cousin once removed and gain intel from the nobles. So she's going to get the whole My Fair Lady kind of makeover and get the haircut, get trained on etiquette, things like that, how to mix in and seem like a noble so she can get intel with them. And this is where her training really starts with the other metals. Brees teaches her how to soothe and riot by burning brass. So there's your first level up. So Vin has her first mission at Keep Venture, and she has her first meeting with Eland. Eland is interesting at first, but Sazed is kind of annoyed by him, pretty much says he isn't impressed with him, but he's also excited about her interaction with Eland because that's the kind of, wow, getting involved with the most powerful house in the Empire, that's a big opportunity there, right? But Kelsier returns and he tells her, I don't think he told her at this point, I might be wrong, I don't know if he told her, but I know that he did learn that Vin's father was at the ball. So right off, you're like, okay, so Vin's father is alive. Okay, so nothing new in a fantasy story. That's okay. Cool. Just little tidbits like that. But that night, he decides to take Vin to Credit Shaw. Now, Credit Shaw is the palace of the Lord Ruler. Now, there is this hut that the Lord Ruler visits for 3 hours a day, every 3 days, and it's really got their interest, obviously. They want to know what the deal is, what's he doing in there. He doesn't seem like the type that's going to go and pray to some god, since he is apparently God, right? So they go there and they break in to check it out. They fight guards. Vin makes her first kill. Handles it really well, if I'm being honest here. Living life on the streets, I think that you might be a little desensitized to something like that, to where you would process a little more than just everyday commoner would, or something like that. So, but it's a good scene. But they're attacked by Inquisitors, and Vin grabs this leather-bound book randomly to use as defense, before, because she's running out of powers, she's running out of metal, and she uses the book as defense, and she loses consciousness. Someone kills the Inquisitors, but apparently it isn't Kelsier. I don't recall if we ever find out this book who that was. I don't know. That's one of those things, like I said, I feel like that would have been revealed better if I did this review immediately after reading it. That's just kind of what I remember. But then she's injured. She's out for a while, out of commission to heal. And Sayzed takes a book and decides, hey, I bet I can translate this. Give me a little while. But there's a long break here of recovery, and you get more training and kind of things like that. But eventually, Vin attends her next formal at Keep Ilariel. Now, House Ilariel is quite a different beast here. And Elend is there, and he drops a stack of books at her table. And so she says, no one's looking, right? So she just goes ahead and she looks right through one of them, and she finds it's kind of got a lot of treasonous stuff in it. And she's like, what's that about? But she puts the books back real fast before he gets back. And she sees him leave with some of his friends that are some of the children of the nobles that are also going to inherit some of these houses. And so, he's you stick with what you know, right? These royal nobles got to stick with each other. So she thinks he's just another noble because, I think it's Clubs. Is it Clubs? Or I think it's Doxson actually. It's always telling her all nobles are the same. There's no such thing as a good noble kind of thing. So that's kind of rubbed off on her a little bit. Obviously being a Ska, living on the Skas already have no love lost for nobles. But now that she's actually being among them, she's kind of torn between, I don't know if they're just terrible people. I don't know if it's just been blown up or what. So I think she's kind of confused about the whole thing. But I feel like she's handling it really well. Much more well than I would have. But at that thing, Ben also meets Shan. Is it Shan or Sean? S-H-A-N. I always said Shan. Shan Ilariel. She notices that Shan is able to soothe. So she automatically knows, okay, well, she is an allomancer. But later on, Marsh teaches Vin about seeking by burning brass, which, like I said, helps to detect allomancy. And Sayzed teaches her feruchemy. Now, if I'm saying feruchemy wrong, I'm sorry. That's how I said it. Feruchemy is an interesting beast. Like I said, it's basically where you can store things like strength and time and power and anything in this metal that that they wear as like armbands, and they can store it up and save it for later, including time. Like I said, time is a big one. That's cool. Strength, time, knowledge, all those kind of things into these little armbands, or just not just always armbands. It's just metal, period. But obviously, Sayzed wears all this jewelry and stuff, and he stores it all in there. So we go to the next social, and Shan approaches Vin and asks her to report to her anything of question she sees in Elend's books. And she's like, fuck, I'm not working for you, right? She does talk with Elend, and she asks him some pretty personal questions, honestly. I like that she asks him if he's ever slept with a Ska woman before, and he admits that his father made him. It's like, wow, uncomfortable much. So it was a very interesting development there. But Elend does give her a handkerchief, which apparently in this world signals that you would like to date someone. You would like to court them. It's a proper way of courting. So again, what luck? What luck? You're getting in with the son of the most powerful house in the nation, right? So Vin decides she's going to spy on Elend and his noble friends and see if they plan. Just kind of see what they're up to. She sees that they plan to change things when they take over their houses to stop the Lord Ruler. So they feel like the next generation, they got some plans. They're not content with the way that things have been going. They actually want to change things. So that's a refreshing little deal there. And when she gets back, Hammond teaches Vin about pewter, which enhances physical strength. So again, level up, level up. There has been a Scowl Rebellion at a garrison in the north, and it turns out that it is Kelsier's army, the army that he has been putting together off page. But this rebellion, it is easily squashed, and Kelsier's forces are basically, they're down to like less than 2,000 men at this point. And, the crew takes the loss pretty hard, and they start to wonder if, the whole job's a failure, if they should just give up and just accept this is how society is going to be and learn to live with it. And that's when they learn that there are going to be executions taking place in the town square. And this is where the Lord Ruler hit a new, and I'm guys know I refer to Brandon Sanderson as the Lord Ruler. When I'm talking about this book, I'm talking about the villain in the book when I'm talking about the Lord Ruler. Just want to clear that up. But again, this is where the Lord Ruler just hits a new level for me as far as villains go, because this dude knows no limit to cruelty. He decides he's going to execute some Ska in the town square, and he just completely picks by random just to teach a lesson about rebellion. And it's just brutal. It's like talking about they're letting their blood run to the fountain and all that stuff. It's a dark, dark scene. And this is when I said that these books have a fuck ton of violence in them. This is where I think it really just like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's dark, and it's a really, really brutal chapter. This is something I'd expected out of a Abercrombie book right here. because it is dark. It might not be as descriptive as Joe might do, but it definitely seems like something you could see happening in Adua for sure. So the crew decides they're going to use this as motivation, and they're going to keep going. They're going to not give up. They're going to plan their next move. This guy's Vin and Kelsier. They meet with Marsh, and he says he has a plan to, and an end basically, to infiltrate the Ministry. And okay, go for it. He's going undercover. Why not? Why not? At the next social, Vin learns that Eland's house is in charge of the Pits of Hathsin, and that they are basically mining atium, and that is how they are such a powerful house, because this is the most valuable resource in this land, right? So Eland's friends then try to convince him that Vin is a spy, and he's not really having any of it. He goes and he talks to other people about it, and he talks to his father and has them basically convinced that to let him borrow a couple of spies. God, I forget his name. Heft? I can't even think of what his name is. One of these guys is a world hopper, and I feel like I'm going to really regret not getting more info on this, but he has showed up in other stories. I'm not sure which. Check the comments. There'll be guys that are real big into the Cosmere that will tell you which one of these guys is. One of these spies that is working with Eland to spy on, or basically one of these guys that is following Vin to see if she is a spy. He is a world hopper, and I can't remember his name, so... Bad notes, guys. Bad notes. I don't feel like stopping the whole episode to look that up. But the house wars are underway. You know, the whole point of Vin doing this was to gather intel, sow seeds of discontent, so to speak. Kelsier's been doing like political assassinations to try to frame other houses to get them like, you know, pissed at each other and warring. And it starts. They have started, and Vin discovers that Eland is going to be assassinated. And she decides to go and save him, even though they're like, what are you doing? He's a noble, right? So she fights off just like numerous opposing enemies here, including Shan, who turns out to be a Mistborn. It's a really good fight, but Vin wins. She kills her. This is obviously her most crazy fight and biggest victory up to this point. But it shows, wow, you know what? She is really, really powerful. But Vin tells Kelsier about the house venture running the Pits of Hathsin, which is where Kelsier was held prisoner and where his wife died. And he's obviously takes it about as well as you expect. But while he deals with that, Spook teaches Vin how to burn tin. Again, that enhances all five senses. I said I point the eyes because they talk about it being a 10 eye. But you know, you take like you burn some burn tin. Does that mean that like everything you eat tastes better? Is that, or do you just taste it more in detail? Because sometimes that might not be good, you know. Anyway, these are things I think about when I'm reading these books. Then at Kelsier, they go and they meet up with Marsh and find a disembodied corpse, and they presume it is Marsh after finding a letter he left saying that the Ministry was suspicious of him. So they have to consider the fact that maybe Marsh gave them up, right? So Kelsier orders everyone, let's get out of Club's place, let's get to the next rendezvous point, and then Kelsier goes to the pits, and he just lays waste to him, man. He frees all the Sky prisoners there, and he just destroys his place. And I'm choked up. I'm like, hell yes. This is a guy I can get behind. This is the character that I want. I'm full on board with Kelsier here. I'm loving this guy. I can't wait to read this guy for the rest of the trilogy. Do you guys feel the same? Okay, so Spook is captured, and he is going to be a part of more public executions for as you know, penance for what Kelsier did at the pits. And Kelsier attempts to save the prisoners, and he ends up in a fight with an Inquisitor, and there's just shit going crazy. The Inquisitor buries a back in Lord Renault, which I forgot to mention that Lord Renault is actually a Kandra, and a Kandra is someone who can consume the bones or the corpse of something and take on its shape, right? So he's actually a Kandra named Oriser. So I forgot to mention that. So while I say that Lord Renault is killed here, all it did is it kills the body, and the Kandra comes out, and they can, you know, take over another body, right? Anyhow, that's important for later, and that's why I guess I like I said, I forgot to bring that up. Eland, he is there. He's trying to save Vin, or Valette, whatever you want to call her. He thinks it's Valette. We know it's Vin, so I just keep referring to her as Vin. Did I not mention that Valette was her undercover name, her undercover noble name? Anyhow, so the Inquisitor takes a swing at him with an axe and misses. And Kelsier, he knows that Vin is in love with him, so he goes and saves him. And, he finally he's able to defeat the Inquisitor, takes its axe, cuts its head off, whatever. And then shit gets real. The Lord Ruler shows up. And this guy is metal as fuck, right? There is no stopping this guy. Like a bunch of Scowl come, they like stab him with spears. He don't even stop. He just keeps walking. He just pretty much like ignores them. All the other Inquisitors take those guys out. They kill all of them. He's not phased at all. He ignores everyone and heads straight for Kelsier. And he backhands him so hard and using Allomancy. Everybody thinks that it's killed him. But Kelsier is still alive. He is not dead yet. Right here, I'm like, no. They're not. I just said I am fully on board with this. I love this character. You're not going to do this to me. You're not going to Obi-Wan me here, even though I should have seen it coming. But yeah, it's right when it's happening, and I'm like, no! Yes, but I see it coming. Nothing you can do to stop it. But there's a really good quote that Kelsier has right before he dies. He says, but you can't kill me, Lord Tyrant. I represent that one thing that you've never been able to kill. No matter how hard you try, I am hope. And, oh, man, it's just awful. It's awful. Lord Ruler runs him through with a spear and kills him. Then tries to go to him. Ham restrains her. And, the rest of the crew escape. And what makes this even worse is that when they get back to their hideouts, you find out that Orser consumed his bones and can now take on his persona. So this is like doubly hard for Vin. So she doesn't like Chandra or Orser very much at all. She's quite disgusted by this. But the crew, they're thinking it's over. They're thinking about going their own ways. Sazed's talking about going on, moving all the way somewhere, and then they realize that that Kelsier's kind of become a symbol, a martyr among the Ska, and they begin to rebel in his memory. So it's on. This is it. It is on now, and they decide, okay, let's make this final push. Let's do this for Kelsier, kind of thing. Then decides it's payback time. She heads to Krennic Shaw, but only finds an old bald man sitting by the fire when she gets to the Lord Ruler's place, and she's knocked out and sent to the dungeons. When she wakes up, she sees that she's then taken to see the Lord Ruler, who looks the same as not the old man, the way he has the whole story, and she sees that her father is there, and one of the Inquisitors points out that that this man is Vin's father, and Vin confirms that this is true, and he's killed. It was like, wow, that was unexpected, right? If I'm not remembering exactly why it went that way, maybe you can remember for me. I don't remember exactly. The whole stuff with her family has kind of escaped my memory. I know there's some things about her brother. There's some things about her parents, like her mother killing her sister or something like that. I don't remember. I'll have to actually try to talk with a friend of mine, see if he can shake my memory loose about that. So that's my fault. I don't really remember exactly all of her family stuff there, or why her father is killed, just because they find out that Vin is his daughter. But Elend decides he's going to turn himself into the crew, and he learns that Vin has been captured and decides, you know what, we're going to team up and we're going to go get her. But Vin is returned to her cell, and then Sazed is thrown in there with her, and he decides to use some of his pewter mines as his bands to gain strength. And he basically like hulks up, and he's able to help them get out of their manacles and get out of their cell. And Ben just like loading up on all these metals. She's ready to go. She's ready to fight here at the end. Have this final confrontation with the Lord Ruler. Elend's group shows up and helps them fight off the soldiers. She asks Sazed to take Elend to safety while she goes to fight the Lord Ruler. And then Marsh, Kelsier's brother, is revealed to be one of the Inquisitors that has been guarding the Lord Ruler. But he kills the other Inquisitor, and then he rushes at the Lord Ruler. And Lord Ruler just slaps that shit away. They get out of my face. I ain't got time for this. He just flicks him away like he's no big deal. He removes his shirt for the fight, and Vin sees he is wearing the ferrochemical adium bracelets, like Sazed was. And so Vin channels the mist. She pulls the bracelets off his arms, and he begins to age rapidly. And you really, yes, he was the old bald man that she saw before. He is very like, I think it says like it looks like he's in his 70s, but obviously he's much, much older than that. Obviously he was, like 1,000. He's ruled this thing for 1,000 years. But another good quote, he tells her, "You don't know what I do for mankind. I was your God, even if you couldn't see it. By killing me, you have doomed yourselves." And then Vin kind of runs him through with a spear, killing him. And I actually said out loud, "That one's for Kelsier, you son of a bitch." Yeah, so it was a good moment. But you'd be lying if you didn't think, well, what was he talking about then? That didn't just sound like usual bad guy speak, right? Yeah, there you go. There you go. He is dead. And this book ends with Sazed telling Vin that Kelsier transferred Orser's contract to her, and she isn't interested since he's taking on Kelsier's appearance. And we'll tackle a little bit more of that when we get into Well of Ascension, because it actually has a really interesting resolution. But she goes to Eland, who is now in control of the Final Empire, basically, because Straff took off while the House Wars were going on. He's like, let's just get out of here. So technically, Eland is now in control of all this as the proverbial credits roll. So guys, that is book 1. And you would think with the way this ends that maybe Sanderson wrote this as a one-off. It seems like it's kind of like Star Wars A New Hope. And I know I keep bringing that comparison up just based off the name, but kind of like if it had been closed-ended, it would have been fine. You can see that, okay, it could have been open-ended. It leaves it open for a sequel, but if he had not been super popular and they didn't decide to continue the series, maybe you could have seen that it ended there or whatever. But it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, well, it doesn't seem like there's too terribly much more to go off of. Guys, you have no idea what is coming. Because, I was stunned that they killed the Lord Ruler in the first book. I thought when I knew about this series, it was a trilogy, so I thought, okay, he's going to be there the whole time. I was actually blown away that he killed him in the first book. But guys, you don't know what's coming here. So I'm just trying to think about where I was when I finished this. Like I said, I was like, wow, I kind of almost felt like, a solid story that's had a beginning, middle, and end, and now there's not much left, right? There is so much more to go on to. And while I don't feel like the other 2 books are like that, sticking with that original Star Wars trilogy thing, I definitely feel like 2 and 3 are, one story, not nearly as close-ended as this one was. But guys, that was the Hero of Ages. Like I said, next Wednesday we'll be tackling the Well of Ascension, and this one is kind of become like the ugly stepchild of the 3 kids here, middle kid syndrome, I guess you say. And a lot of people seem like they have mixed opinions on it. I even said myself that I felt like it was the one that was way more political, but I was okay with it. But it was my least favorite of the 3, and I won't be able to really say if that sticks without doing a reread right now. So I hope I didn't leave too terribly much out in this review. Like I said, guys, I read this 3 years ago. I was trying to just remember everything, and I've read 100 such odd books between then and now. So, some things aren't all going to stick up here, especially once you have kids and you have to start pushing stuff out so you remember stuff like the songs to Storybots or something for your kids, right? But you guys want to talk about Hero of Ages, please drop into the comments below. Guys, if you haven't read this series and you watched the spoiler review, I'm sorry that you felt like this was the best way for you to go, but there will be spoilers in the comments, so I watch out for that. Make sure you look out for the guys down there who are going to tell me, you idiot, you forgot about this, 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 and this, and you interpreted this, this, and this, and this wrong. And this was, I didn't even mention Hoyd. How I didn't even mention Hoyd. He is in this. He does talk to Kelsier. I completely screwed the pooch on the Cosmere connections part, and that's on me. Guys, again, like I said, I was going off of such old memories here, and I really just didn't have time to read the book again to really talk about it. But I wanted to do this for Mistborn March, and I'm going to keep doing it. Unless you guys just absolutely hate this and you thumbs down me to oblivion, then I guess I'll stop. But I hope I did a good enough job for you here, remembering what is going on. But if you guys remember more, please fill in the blanks for me. Drop in the comments. Let me know if you thought this book was as good as I did. Whatever your problems are, let me know those too. Discussion always is welcome here. So hit me in the comments, guys, and I will talk to you then.